efforts to rally a defense. After an impassioned call to arms from his pulpit, his commanders and some of the retreating infantry flocked to his side for a last stand. But with the tide of battle now firmly in their favor, the Umayyads simply showered him and his defenders with arrows rather than charge the well-defended trenches.
Yeah.
His position besieged and the...
What the hell what were you thinking? What in the world? Alright, continuation of
video,
the early
second fitna saw
Muslim
the Umayyad Caliphate struggle through years of bloody civil war, emerging shaken but intact. Today, the armies of the Caliphate returned to the frontiers, clashing with the crumbling Byzantine Empire in Armenia and North Africa. In the latter, they would not find opposition just in the Roman remnant, as the rise of a new warrior queen among the Berbers posed a serious challenge to Hassan ibn al-Nu'man's conquering army in the Maghreb. And even as the Umayyads won victories on the battlefield and expanded ever further, the cohesion and unity of their empire continued to deteriorate on their eastern frontiers, planting the seeds of their eventual collapse. Better to plant a tree instead, eh? And you can do that while expanding your realm at the same time by using our sponsor.
This is bullshit.
Following Ibn al-Zubayr's death and the surrender of his forces at the end of an 8-month-long siege of Mecca, the immediate aftermath of the second fitna would see Caliph Abd al-Malik dispatch armies to suppress the Kharijite uprisings that had been such a thorn in his would-be usurper's side. The Kharijite army ruling Yemen and Central Arabia had already begun to fragment and dissolve even before the Umayyad victory in the civil war, with their leader Najib ibn Amir al-Hanafi having been executed by his own disillusioned forces over his supposed secret negotiations with the Umayyads. Many of the Kharijites dispersed before the Umayyad reconquest, making for Persia or North Africa. With that said,
so all that was for nothing?
The Kharijite remainder, led by Abu Fudayk, put up staunch resistance to General Umar ibn Ubaydallah's Iraqi army when they met in battle in Bahrain, driving back the Basrans making up the Umayyad left wing and seriously wounding Umar. However, they were held at bay by the Kufan right wing and the Syrian cavalry making up the center, then driven back to their camp when the Basrans rallied and returned to the fray. With the wind at the Umayyads' backs, the Kharijite camp was set alight, with the smoke and heat panicking horses and reducing the Kharijite defense to chaos. With Abu Fudayk slain on the battlefield, those of his followers that remained fled to the fortress of al-Mashaqqa, but with no relief or reinforcement coming, the walls of the ancient fortress did little more than entrap them. Lacking supplies, surrender came swiftly.
Bro, if you know that reinforcements are not going to come, just run away. Literally trapping yourself for what?
And little mercy was shown.
Run away.
The mass executions of most of Abu Fudayk's followers, ending the brief period of Kharijite dominance in Arabia in a grisly fashion. Though Kharijites still held sway in parts of southern Persia and would be behind further uprisings in the future, this would be their last major bid for power.
I was reading that thing.
Power within the caliphate. A more serious challenge to the reunified Umayyad realm would come in the north, with the breakdown of the peace treaty with Byzantium. Under Emperor Justinian II's leadership, the Byzantines had not been entirely uninvolved in the caliphate's civil war, extorting tribute from the Umayyads and even taking control of Armenia from the Zubayrids. They also backed and supported uprisings of Christians within the divided caliphate. In the Nur Mountains, where Anatolia and the Levant meet, the Mardarite community had risen up along with thousands of escaped slaves in 688, launching raids into Syria and forcing the overextended Umayyads to make even greater concessions to quell a threat uncomfortably close to their seat of power.
Bro, I had Muslims in my comments trying to defend slavery in the caliphate and in the Muslim world. Bro, all I'm gonna say is, and I always say this, okay, but I have to, because if I don't, like, people won't understand. Again, if things are so sunshine and rainbows, why do you have slaves that are trying to escape and literally rebelling against the caliphate if things were so sunshine and rainbows?
Though no major
That's all I'm gonna say.
fought.
I've talked enough about this that I already feel like talking more about this right now.
And it is unlikely this Byzantine involvement greatly impacted the civil war's course. Justinian II was able to secure a great deal of tribute, and, more importantly, the Mardarites themselves, who were relocated to regions of southern Anatolia left depopulated by Arab raiding to help rebuild the Byzantine power base. However, while the relocation of the Mardarites was a major economic boon for the flagging Byzantine Empire, it also removed an obstacle from the path of a renewed caliphate offensive after the civil war's end. Surprisingly, despite the favourable terms of the 689 treaty, it was Justinian that broke it and made the first move, attempting to regain full control of Cyprus and its revenues after decades of shared ownership. This action could be seen as a defensively minded preemptive strike, with Justinian expecting Abd al-Malik to break it as soon as his strength was replenished. Or Justinian may have simply underestimated the caliphate's strength, hoping to secure even greater concessions after a battlefield victory. Either way, the renewal of hostilities quickly backfired for the Romans. Though precise dates are unclear, the later months of 692 saw two clashes take place: a smaller army of 4,000 invading Armenia under Uthman ibn al-Walid, and a push into Anatolia by the bulk of the remaining Umayyad armies under the Umayyad prince Muhammad ibn Marwan, a younger brother of the Caliph. Both generals achieved victory, thanks in part to the defection of thousands of recently conquered Macedonian Slavs Justinian had attempted to force into his army. These twin defeats undid years of Byzantine expansion and negotiation, leaving Armenia firmly under Arab control and Anatolia open to renewed Arab raiding in the following years.
This is your brain.
On the home front, Abd al-Malik worked aggressively to consolidate power in former rebel strongholds. A figure of central importance during this period was al-Hajjaj ibn Yusuf, who rose to prominence as the leader of the Caliph's personal forces and became famous for his keen military mind. Following the Second Fitna, he was rewarded with the governorship of Yemen and the Hejaz, a major display of Abd al-Malik's trust for the general, given the lingering anti-Umayyad sentiments in the former Zubayrid power base. Though only in the position 2 years, al-Hajjaj swiftly reasserted Umayyad control through harsh, unforgiving leadership and displays of force that both helped cow the rebellious nobility of the Hejaz and allowed Abd al-Malik to demonstrate his mercy through occasional more lenient interventions. Leaving Arabia behind in 694, he was sent next to Iraq, taking over as governor of Basra and Kufa from the Umayyad prince Bashir ibn Marwan, and working to reassert control over a fractured and rebellious Persia, where he would soon find himself on the front lines of another rebellion.
Oh yeah, that's something that I actually heard about. One of my Persian viewers told me. I actually kind of saw this somewhere else. Despite the fact that Persia was conquered, it was conquered on paper, but there was a lot of rebellious parts of it.
Meanwhile,
which is actually cool because, you know, the way how I saw Persia got defeated was so, like, I was like, wow, this is the mighty Persian Empire that just got essentially just mocked, right? I'm like, and now they're just gone, like, just like that, right? So it was cool when I heard that, you know, there were some aspects of it still resisting. I was like, oh, okay. Because originally I just thought that Persia was just docile and just completely just got stepped over on, but nope.
On the western frontiers, expansion was beginning anew. While the Caliphate had been the dominant power in North Africa for decades, the continuing Byzantine presence in Carthage left their hold over the region tenuous at best. Additionally, outside of fortified cities such as the aforementioned Carthage and Kairouan, The native Berbers held effective control of most of the Maghreb, with different groups entering into alliances with either the caliphate or Byzantines based on shared religion or political expediency. So as long as the Byzantines represented an opposing power bloc, they could forge alliances with Berber kingdoms and tribes that had not yet converted to Islam and back native opposition to the caliphate's expansion. To finally stamp out this threat, Abd al-Malik dispatched Hassan ibn al-Numan with 40,000 Syrian, Egyptian and converted Berber soldiers in 694 to capture Carthage. Initially, the invasion met only success, with the city's fleet and garrison abandoning Carthage for Sicily before Hassan's arrival in early 695, and allowing the city to fall without resistance. Hassan had more enemies in North Africa than he knew, however. Following the death of King Caecilius, or Kusila, to the armies of Zubayr ibn Qais, a new ruler had emerged to reunite the Berber kingdom Zuhayya had shattered. Known as Queen Dia to the Berbers, she was called Al-Kahina, the Oracle, by the Arabs, with rumors of her future sight a mark of her strategic prowess. As Dia united many Berber groups across religious lines in opposition to Hassan's advance, she entered into an alliance with Constantinople, cemented by her marriage to a Greek husband. Learning of Dia's prestige and determined to suppress Berber resistance, Hassan swiftly departed Carthage to march against her in Algeria, seemingly expecting another easy victory. Instead, when he engaged the large army Dia had raised near Bakaya, he saw the previous year's progress rapidly undone in a shocking military defeat. The precise details of the so-called Battle of Meskiana, named for the shallow river valley the two armies clashed in, are rather unclear, though it is known that even among converted Muslim Berbers, a sizable portion favored Dia's cause, chafing at the inferior treatment non-Arab converts within the Caliphate's military received, just as the Persian converts of Iraq had during the Second Fitna.
Whoa! Whoa! Discrimination! You know what I'm about to say, right? You already know what I'm gonna say. I gotta call this out. What is going on here? I thought the Quran states that everyone is equal. Now, according to literally all my Muslim people that watch me, or the ones that talk about what the Quran says, the Quran says not to discriminate. Everyone's equal. Well, I don't even think he even exactly says that. Nah, but the point is, why are you discriminating against fellow Muslims? What's going on there? It's funny because a lot of, like, the way how I should say Arabs are, I'm gonna say Arabs or people from the Arabian Peninsula when their caliphate originally expanded, they honestly share the same traits and tendencies as Europeans. Like they'll complain about Europeans, but they're no better than Europeans. It's literally the same. In some cases, they're even worse than Europeans. I've talked about that a few times before. But like, really, not even I would expect. I knew Muslims would probably, not even probably, they did actually, would discriminate against non-Muslims. I know that, but this is actually surprising to me. Discriminating against other Muslims that are converts, like, bro, you should be happy that they even converted in the first place to your religion, bro. You reward them by discriminating against them. Wow, Islam is so sunshine and rainbows.
The defection of Berbers in Hassan's army before or during the battle could go some distance towards explaining the defeat of his larger and better armed force. Though whatever the cause of this disaster, the stung Hassan would abandon the campaign to await reinforcements in Tripolitania, not to challenge Dia for another 5 years. He did, however, clash once more with the Byzantines during his retreat, who, under General Absimar, had recaptured Carthage by sea in a surprise attack while Hassan had been marching against Dia. This time, Hassan took no chances. After years of Byzantine resistance and fleet activity out of the city, he chose to raze Carthage to the ground, as Scipio Africanus the Younger had centuries prior, conclusively ending the Byzantine foothold in the Maghreb and stripping Dia of a crucial ally. For his part, rather than continue the resistance in North Africa, Absimar commandeered the Carthage fleet for a voyage to Constantinople, where he overthrew Emperor Leontios and seized the throne as the new Emperor Tiberius III, compounding the internal strife and instability that had already weakened the Byzantine resistance over the past years.
If a man really hated...
Accompanying these temporary setbacks in the west was a new breakout of rebellion in the east. The Hephthalite-descended Zunbil Kingdom of Afghanistan was proving a formidable roadblock to Governor al-Hajjaj's expansion attempts, and the first campaign against them in 690.
It's always. I just realized it has subtitles on. Afghanistan always gives everyone problems.
Ended in utter failure when Ubaydallah ibn Abi Bakr's army was lured into the heart of the mountainous kingdom, cut off from retreat, and destroyed. The greatest threat to al-Hajjaj and the Umayyads would not come from the Zunbils, though, but from the general sent to lead the second invasion, Abd al-Rahman ibn Muhammad ibn al-Ash'ath. When he attacked the Zunbils in early 700, they fell back without battle, abandoning large swaths of their territory to the invaders. Fearing the same trap that had doomed Ubaydallah's army, al-Ash'ath opted not to push on into their mountainous heartland, planning to consolidate his conquests and continue cautiously expanding over the years to follow. But when al-Hajjaj learned of this, he accused Abd al-Rahman of cowardice, demanding he complete the conquest of the Zunbils before he or any of his men would be allowed home to Iraq. Here, the harshness he had so often shown while subduing the Hijaz would backfire, as the soldiers in Abd al-Rahman's army, wary of the danger ahead and angered by their poor treatment, opted to follow Abd al-Rahman back to Iraq to depose al-Hajjaj rather than pressing on into Afghanistan as ordered. Reaching an accord with the Zunbils, promising them tribute exemption should he be victorious, in exchange for safe haven should...
When the colonial empire doesn't go according to plan. I swear! Like, bro, I see so many people literally try to sugarcoat the first caliphate. I'm watching this, I'm hearing uprisings, problems, mistreatment, discrimination, freaking escaped slaves. What else? Like, my goodness gracious me, man.
Should he be defeated, he began his march west through Persia, defeating al-Hajjaj's loyal commander, Atiyah ibn Amr al-Anbari, in a series of cavalry engagements along the way. At this point, Abd al-Rahman's rebellion was strictly targeting al-Hajjaj, and no threats towards Abd al-Malik or claims for the title of caliph had been made. But after receiving word of the mutiny, Abd al-Malik opted to back his unpopular governor, sending several thousand experienced Syrian cavalry with all haste to Basra to reinforce him. In a last-ditch effort to turn back the rebels, al-Hajjaj sent 2,000 of these new arrivals to block the mutineers from crossing the Dujail River in the lowlands of Khuzestan. But while they initially saw success against a 300-strong advance force, the rebel army, raised and outfitted for conquest and certainly outnumbering the Syrians, even if the reported strength of 100,000 is a clear exaggeration, soon forded the shallow river, forcing their way across and putting the Syrians to rout. In the aftermath of this clash, the rebels expanded the scope of their movement, now disavowing Abd al-Malik and seeking his overthrow, along with that of al-Hajjaj. It is possible Abd al-Rahman had intended this from the beginning, and simply used the battle as justification. But whether this was the case or not, he now represented a major threat to the overextended caliphate, with so much of Abd al-Malik's core Syrian army away fighting in North Africa. Arriving in Basra in February of 701, after al-Hajjaj had fled north towards Kufa, Abd al-Rahman took advantage of the departed governor's unpopularity to secure oaths of loyalty from much of Basra, fortifying the city and engaging in a month of skirmishing with al-Hajjaj's forces before sallying forth to do battle in mid-March. Initially, the Iraqis held the upper hand. Though the two armies met in the open, al-Hajjaj's loyal forces, drawn from the Qurayshi and Thaqif tribal confederations of the Hejaz and the Caliph's Syrian reinforcements, were soon forced to retreat to the defensive trenches they had prepared to foil the enemy's cavalry charges. Fierce fighting took place for most of the day, with the spearmen on al-Hajjaj's flanks falling back in disarray and the centre on the verge of rout. But on the very brink of defeat, an unexpected charge by Sufyan ibn al-Abrad al-Kalbi, leading the forces of Syria's powerful Kalb tribe, one of the few to remain loyal to the Umayyads at the start of the Second Fitna, impacted the Iraqis' right wing, the trench fighting breaking up formations and confusing their defense. With the pressure lessened, the Syrian and Hijazi forces rallied, splitting the Iraqi army in two and setting them to flight. Abd al-Rahman immediately retreating north with the Kufan soldiers and most of his cavalry, while one of his lesser commanders, Ibn Abd al-Muttalib, led the Basran forces in a 3-day fighting retreat before finally escaping al-Hajjaj's pursuit and taking off after his departed general. But despite this defeat and al-Hajjaj's subsequent recapture of Basra, Abd al-Rahman's mutiny was still a major concern for Caliph Abd al-Malik, especially once the people of Kufa rose up to depose al-Hajjaj's loyal overseer, Ibn al-Hadrami, and offer Abd al-Rahman their support upon his arrival. A year later, when al-Hajjaj marched north again after pacifying Basra and receiving further Syrian reinforcements, he found a greatly bolstered rebel army awaiting him outside Kufa. With both forces now wary of a decisive engagement, they each entrenched themselves on April 4th, 702, with weeks of—
I swear everything happens in April. I cannot, bruh. Why does everything happen in April? All of these major freaking events, they always happen, like I said this before. But guys, just pay attention to these dates. Pay attention to these dates. Everything, not everything, but so much always happens in freaking April. It's like April is like, I'm not saying that because I'm born in April. But is it because like April is like spring, right? It's not too hot, not too cold. Is that why? I don't know. I always thought maybe that's why. But man, everything always happens in freaking April. Even these reactions that I do, I always hear April. This happened in April. This happened in April. Bro, Rome was founded on my birthday, April 21st. Like the city of Rome was literally founded April 21st. Like everything happens in April.
Of low-intensity raiding and probing attacks following. This drawn-out exchange favored the Iraqis, who could easily resupply from Kufa, while al-Hajjaj's army struggled to feed itself in the unfriendly territory. And when word of the ongoing stalemate reached Abd al-Malik, he went as far as offering to remove al-Hajjaj in exchange for peace. Yet, surprisingly, Abd al-Rahman and his companions chose to refuse this offer,
Bro, what?
his army redoubling the pressure on al-Hajjaj's trenches with daily attacks. This back-and-forth skirmishing between the trenches continued until mid-July.
Why did he decline that? That's such a... What? Isn't that giving him... Huh? Nah, I need an explanation on that.
The morale of the rebels began to flag after the death of their cavalry commander, Jabala ibn Zayd. With no quick victory in sight, some of Abd al-Rahman's commanders began to question the wisdom of refusing the Caliph's peace offering, with some possibly reaching out in secret to the Umayyads in hopes of receiving pardons for their defection.
You may think that
When the two armies finally came together again in pitched battle on July 15th, both armies held firm through the fierce fighting until midday, seemingly evenly matched. But like in the previous battle, it would be a charge by al-Kalbi that decided the outcome. Rushing out with his cavalry from behind the Syrian right wing, he attacked the Iraqi left wing under the command of al-Abrad ibn Qurra, a leader normally noted for his bravery. Here, however, Ibn Qurra fell back in retreat almost immediately, leading to unconfirmed accusations in some accounts that his desertion had been negotiated with the Umayyads before the battle. With the collapse of the left wing, many in the rebel center began to flee as well, despite Abd al-Rahman's best efforts to rally a defense. After an impassioned call to arms from his pulpit, his commanders and some of the retreating infantry flocked to his side for a last stand. But with the tide of battle now firmly in their favor, the Umayyads simply showered him and his defenders with arrows rather than charge the well-defended trenches.
Yeah.
His position besieged and the...
What the hell what were you thinking? What in the world? I'm sure they knew that they had arrows. What the heck? Oh, that's so
battle
stupid.
Lost.
That's
Abd
actually
al-Rahman
so
fled east to the safety of the Zunbils.
What the hell,
marking
man?
the end of his attempt on the caliphate. Back in the Maghreb, though seemingly unchallenged following her victory at Meskiana, Dia unwittingly planted the seeds of her own downfall by embarking on a scorched earth campaign in the territory she had driven Hassan from. Likely viewing the caliphate's renewed invasion as simply ambitious raiding, she may have hoped to dissuade them from returning by stripping the border regions of plunder, or to demoralize them further after their defeat with a display of brutality. Unfortunately, this move would quickly backfire, for many under Dia's banner, especially those who lived in the affected lands or used them for grazing, were angered by the wasteful and self-destructive action, and without the immediate unifying threat of the caliphate, Dia's Berber kingdom began to fragment. As these events are filtered through the interpretations of non-Berber outsiders, it is even possible the fragmentation had begun earlier, and what Arab observers saw as a scorched earth campaign was in reality an attempt to stamp out brewing tribal rebellion. Thus, despite her massive victory in battle, Dia would never reach Kairouan as her predecessor Caecilius had, with her dominance of the Maghreb reduced to little more than her homeland in the Oris mountain highlands by the time Hassan returned with reinforcements in late 702. Dia mustered what loyal forces remained to her, picking an advantageous battleground to await Hassan's arrival, Tabaka, on the coast north of the modern Tunisian city of Jendouba, where the Oris Mountains and Mediterranean Sea formed a natural choke point. The choice of the battlefield was sound. The terrain would constrain and hamper the numerically superior Muslim army, while the presence of the Byzantine fleet at Sicily prevented Hassan from simply bypassing the choke point by sea. Nevertheless, when the battle was joined early in 703, Dia would see first her army and then her kingdom shatter, with no more Byzantine gold to sway tribes to her banner, and with her actions having alienated most of the lowlanders, many of those who had fought with her at Meskiana deserted her or chose to join Hassan, now that the caliphate was the only remaining power bloc in the region. Though she narrowly escaped the disastrous defeat, she was pursued into the Oris Mountains and slain soon after, ending the years of back-and-forth fighting to conquer the Maghreb.
So much for that.
To aid in the...
So, did the caliphate... the caliphate... Yeah, the caliphate reached the Atlantic. Wonder why the caliphate never bothered to go into the Atlantic.
rebuilding of the devastated region after Carthage's razing and Dia's scorched earth campaign, thousands of Coptic Christians were resettled from Egypt, taking up residence in newly founded Tunis to work in Hassan's new shipyards for the growing caliphate. In a cruel twist of irony though, Hassan would not get to enjoy the spoils of his great victory any longer than Dia had, as a dispute over jurisdiction with Abdulaziz ibn Marwan, governor of Egypt and brother to the caliph, ended with Hassan losing his hard-earned governorship and returning to Syria in disgrace and poverty scarcely a year later, while Abdulaziz expanded his own power on the back of Hassan's success by installing his loyal servant Musa ibn Nusayr in his place.
That's sad and all, but you know what's truly sad? The fact that there's no Carthage Empire. Bro, ever since Carthage, like, lost the Punic Wars, this region just became a freaking, essentially like a highway. I don't even, yeah, basically a highway where empires just went left, right, and center, and they just kept going, taking Carthage one by one. and there's no, like, Carthage didn't try to resurge itself. There was no attempt to make a new Carthaginian kingdom, empire, state. Like, it was just gone. Just like that, such an influential empire just gone, you know? It's so criminal. Like, so watching all of this and seeing what used to be like the mighty Carthage just essentially being used as a freaking playground, bro. Like, what happened to the Carthage? Gosh, I hate talking for overbite. Oh my gosh, that's annoying. I'm probably gonna get braces in like a month, so I'll start fixing that problem. But like, what happened to the freaking Carthaginians, man? Somebody told me that the Carthaginians were Romanized, but like, surely they couldn't have forgotten about freaking Carthage, right? The Greeks were conquered by Rome, and you know, a Greek state eventually came back. Sad that didn't happen with Carthage, though.
It was Musa, not Hassan, who would push west to the Atlantic coast in the following few years, converting and assimilating most of the Berber tribes in his path, and waging war against those that refused, finally standing poised for the next great conquest of the ever-growing caliphate, Visigothic Spain. In the east, meanwhile, the unrest sparked by Abd al-Rahman's rebellion would continue for years, with his former companions splitting up and raising later uprisings in Sistan and Khorasan, even after the Zumbils caved to the caliphate's demands and executed him. Iraq and Persia would remain centers of anti-Umayyad discontent, and Afghanistan unconquered for the rest of the Umayyad era, with the same racial and sectarian tensions that had fueled first al-Muqtar's and later Abd al-Rahman's rebellions, eventually leading to their downfall. Thanks again to our sponsor, Established Titles.
If you're new to my channel, you know, I recommend you drop a suggestion down below. If you're an active viewer of mine, I recommend you check out my channel membership, 99 cents a month. Okay, most important benefit being more priority to your comments being replied to, as I am a busy person, and your suggestions will be done much more quicker. And also, you could get more favors out of me, like much more. Okay, your privileged class, okay, just for 99 cents a month. I'll link it in the comments down below, man. But make sure you turn on post notifications, okay? Turn the bell button on after you subscribe, man. Like the video so that more people can come in this community and check out my other videos on my channel, man. Thank you for watching again, and goodbye.